Climate has always been a major determinant of the activities of humankind. But over the last 2 centuries, the activities of humankind have increasingly become a determinant of climate on a global scale. Southern Africa is uniquely susceptible to the impacts of climate change. The region is expected to experience higher land and ocean surface temperatures than in the past, which will affect rainfall, winds, and the timing and intensity of weather events. Climate change poses a number of risks for regional economic development. Climate change models are predicting increased frequency of floods, cyclones, and droughts, among others. These have a direct impact on livelihoods. This makes it more urgent for the Southern Africa to mitigate against these impacts. Between 2012 and 2017, with support of the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research, BMBF, SASSCAL funded a research portfolio of 88 projects within the thematic areas of agriculture, biodiversity, climate, forestry, and water. The first research portfolio came to an end in April 2018, culminating the first ever SASSCAL Science Symposium. The SASSCAL Science Symposium was preceded by a science policy forum which was by invitation. This symposium was attended by high-level decision and policy makers, heads of universities, SASSCAL board, and selected academia.
I want to start first of all by welcoming all of you that have come from distant places like Germany, and those of you who have come from within SADC to Zambia. We feel very privileged as a country, and on behalf of the President of this Republic, Mr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, we want to say how honored we are to be host to this particular conference. From the little interaction I've had with my Director of Science, this is the first of its kind. And no country cannot acknowledge that honor that has been bestowed on us in Zambia. Secondly, I think over the next few days, you'll be discussing an extremely important subject. A subject that is affecting all of us, and there's no way of running from it. We have an obligation as a team, as a people, to the people of this nation, to the people of SADC and the world over. So for this evening, let me just welcome you to Zambia and wish you all the best. By tomorrow, we will open a different discourse regarding climate change.
Before having this really short lecture, I'm very much in favor of the thinking and the manner you hold your lecture, Madam Minister. I want to be more brief than this speech, because I have tomorrow the opportunity to have a longer speech, and therefore I want to be brief. But at first I would say thank you to you, because you clearly address the challenges of climate change, in particular in Africa. And indeed, it is time to act. And indeed, this research, and we discussed it before, has to have an impact for the governments, an impact for the people, and the livelihood of people in Africa. And this is my impression and my willingness to contribute to the SASSCAL since 9 years. And the success stories mentioned by Professor Olwich really confirmed my optimism that we will be able to have in 15 or 20 years an African institution, and a sustainable African institution which can significantly contribute to the consequences of and the impacts of climate change. I want to be very brief. Yes, we spend a lot of money, but it is a very good investment. Yes, we will be committed for the next 10 to 15 or 20 years. The first step will be to give the 10 million euros for the second research program. Secondly, we will give 3 million for a graduate school in order to have more capacity building activities in the region like we did in SASSCAL.
We had the wonderful experience of welcoming 300 delegates to the first SASSCAL Science Symposium, which took place through the dates of the 16th to the 20th of April 2018. Each delegate represented one of 13 countries. The symposium was proudly hosted by Zambia's Ministry of Higher Education. The overall aim of the SASSCAL Science Symposium was to highlight SASSCAL's key achievements in research, capacity development and service provision, and to introduce the SASSCAL 2.0 research agenda to the SASSCAL stakeholders from science, policy, the public and private sector. Its specific objectives were to include SASSCAL 1.0 by presenting major scientific achievements to the diversity of SASSCAL stakeholders, to introduce SASSCAL 2.0 to the research community and SASSCAL stakeholders, to launch and present various SASSCAL products and services, to allow for science policy dialogues at selected topics, to provide a platform for research integration and regional networking. The SASSCAL Science Symposium was a landmark event that provided a platform for knowledge sharing through keynote addresses, panel discussions, thematic sessions, poster presentations, dialogues, side events, student awards, and a book launch. During the opening session, Dr. Wilfried Kraus, the BMBF Deputy Director General, reiterated Germany's commitment to continue contributing to building Southern Africa's capacity to respond to climate change with the support provided to SASSCAL.
Most African countries had a lot to catch up to and so far have invested only a very small part of their GDP for scientific research. But we see are quite encouraging developments. The number of scientific works produced by Africans has increased significantly over the last 10 years, and also the quality is increasing. There are new funding opportunities, and the expansion of digital infrastructure provides better access to scientific literature and new opportunities for cooperation with institutions outside the continent. This creates new connections to the global networks, knowledge production. All of this, however, cannot cover the serious lack of well-trained experts from Africa in Africa to address key challenges such as climate change, biodiversity loss, sustainable resources management, or, and foremost, food security. As BMBF, we try to support our partners from Africa in building up scientific structures and educational and research capacities in Africa in a variety of ways. The two competence centers of climate change and adapted land use in Southern and Western Africa, SASSCAL and WASSCAL, are cornerstones of our collaboration in the area of academic education, research cooperation, and the development of research infrastructure. Africa and German universities, research institutes and scientific organizations cooperate closely and enable young qualified academics to be excellently trained on the ground, both in research and service provision. We would like to strengthen the component also within SASSCAL, starting with a regional graduate school in integrated water resources management. We consider the excellent training of young researchers a decisive factor for the sustainable impact of research. It opens up prospect for a career in the academic, public or private sector in their home countries or as independent experts. The central role of science and innovation in combating climate change has often been underlined in the past years, and many called for joint action, especially with Africa. Effective protection against climate-related risks needs to be developed as quickly as possible, particularly for rural areas in Africa. SASSCAL and WASSCAL present two model initiatives which we are endeavoring to put these aims into practice. Both centers aim to strengthen research and promote the establishment of research capacities and infrastructure in the partner countries, as well as enable them to draw up their own strategies and priorities for dealing with climate change and its impact. Here, one cannot emphasize enough the importance of a close partnership between policymakers and science. The policymakers need urgently knowledge from science to solve the problems. This is the only way that sustainable long-term structures can be established. It is the only way that people can become capable for taking climate change mitigation into their own hands. The point is at the heart of our collective efforts. Therefore, before we allow ourselves a closer look at the results of the research supporting SASSCAL in its function as Science Service Center, allow me to mention a fundamental aspect. It is largely thanks to science that we have been able to identify climate change as a major global challenge. Climate policy is a central reference point in my ministry and in the whole government of Germany. We consider climate research to be a reliable basis for taking climate policy decisions. The IPCC analysis and evaluates such research. Now, science is facing a further important task. We need sound scientific advice in order to redirect our policy and adapt to climate change. Research and research policy must now turn their attention to questions of which we need to answer in the near and more distant future. SASSCAL and WASSCAL are thus playing a decisive role in empowering people to tackle the negative effects of climate change. This is of vital importance because it affects the lives of countless people in your countries and in particular in my country. The results provided by climate research must not remain abstract. They must be processed comprehensively and transformed in practical applications. The German Research Ministry is providing the African centers with funds up to 50 million euros each in the first funding phase from 2012 to 2016. It plans to provide a further 10 million euros more per center, WASSCAL and SASSCAL, for the second research phase for 3 to 4 years, starting soon this year with the publication of research calls in both service centers in West and South Africa. In return, the partner countries have committed themselves, and this is some very important information, to giving the centers a long-term perspective by involving themselves in regional cooperation structures, by linking them up with natural research institutions, and of course by providing own funding. This is really unique. And I'll be very happy that the countries are doing that, because this is explicitly a sign for ownership. I'm confident that this symposium will offer interesting presentations and ideas, and that you will gain exciting insights into the fruits of German-African research cooperation. Long live the German and Southern African cooperation. Long live SASSCAL and the SASSCAL family. Thank you for your attention.
Professor Nkanduluo, the Zambian Minister of Higher Education, was the guest of honor and officially opened the first SASSCAL Science Symposium.
At this session now, it's my pleasure and honor to call upon our guest of honor, the Honorable Minister, Professor Nkanduluo, MP from Ministry of Higher Education. Honorable Minister.
Acting Permanent Secretary, I recognize your presence and thank you very much. Let me first of all start by thanking the organizers of this particular scientific symposium for the honor that they've given me to come and officially open this very important symposium, which I believe is the first of its kind after 5 years of operation. And my reading informs me that you want to use this platform for promoting dialogue between the policymakers, the scientists and academics, and other players on issues of climate change. Therefore, I want to applaud the people that were behind the thinking of establishing this regional initiative that looks at, first and foremost, research. Secondly, capacity building. On this continent of Africa, Africa at the moment is first of all faced with one very serious problem, that is the issue of poverty. And some of the areas that are affected by climate change actually is what people that are poor are using for survival, such as forests and the land. Secondly, Africa is faced with a depletion of human resource, especially the human resource that has the capacity to respond to the issues on the table. That is in the area of science. Without science, colleagues, we are not going to discuss climate change. And therefore, I'm very grateful as the Minister of Higher Education in this country, who is responsible for research and science, that we have not chosen in addressing climate change to start just saying, no, because the study was done in Germany, this is how we are going to implement in Zambia, which has been the case in most areas that have affected our country. We have actually put right on the table the need to do science research on our continent in the countries that are participating in SASSCAL and WASCO. And let me take advantage of this, having had an opportunity to listen to last night's panel discussion, that I'm calling upon you to ensure that the other SADC countries are brought on the table immediately, regardless of whether they do not have what it takes. They must come on the table and struggle with us to ensure that they are not implementing based on the scientific findings of Zambia or scientific findings of South Africa or Botswana or Angola. They are implementing programs based on the science in their country. The way you are building capacity in the 5 countries is the way I would like to see capacity built in the other countries. And I want to borrow my own work as a person who did a lot of work in HIV. We lost time because in the beginning, research was not on the table. Everybody was running around trying to implement based on extrapolation. Secondly, we did not build the capacity, which is what you're doing. So you should not leave anyone behind. That's what the 17 SDGs say. Nobody should be left behind. And I want to take this opportunity to remind us that Swaziland must come on the table, Lesotho must come on the table, Malawi must come on the table, so that all of us struggle with the issues of climate change together. And if we are going to capacitate our people, let everybody have a stake and eat this piece of cake of capacity building and research. It is important that after a forum like this, it is translated into easier language and disseminated across our continent so that our people can start appreciating that time is gone for indiscriminate cutting of trees. So I'm also looking forward not only to look at research results, I'm also looking at some recommendations at the end of your research findings, which is what we shall use as policymakers to be able to make policy decisions as well as legislation that will help the future and survival of this continent. And I want to wish you great deliberations. But as minister responsible for research and the issues of SASSCAL, I'll be looking forward to a report. So I want to wish you God's blessings and all the best. I declare this symposium, scientific symposium on climate change, open. Thank you.
In her keynote address, the SASSCAL Executive Director, Dr. Jane Olwach, outlined the objectives and regional strategy of SASSCAL.
The value proposition that we are encouraging, and you all know, but it's going to be important when we go forward, is to encourage regionality and thematic nexus in what we do. And this is something that we know, that rather than looking at only the water resources in Angola, for example, that has tried to integrate deforestation and water resources and food security. We believe that when you do that, you've got very intelligent meaning solutions that can lead to this decision-making that we are trying to look at.
Dr. Olwach informed the symposium delegates about SASSCAL's key programs as the SASSCAL Weather Observation Network, the Biodiversity Observation Network and Photo Guide of Southern Africa, development of the Sustainable Development Goals Monitoring Dashboard in partnership with the UNDP, the Supporting EU-African Cooperation on Research Infrastructures for Food Security and Greenhouse Gas Observations project, and the Wetlands Monitoring and Assessment Service for Transboundary Basins in Southern Africa, WEMAST. The WEMAST project is part of the Global Monitoring for Environment and Security, a partnership program of the European Union and the African Union. It is certain SASSCAL will continue to contribute to a climate-resilient Southern Africa.
So we have a strategy, we have a plan, we have a call, and we have funding. So we are in good hands as we move forward.
Professor Dr. Jorg Helmskrott, the SASSCAL Director of Science, Technology and Capacity Development, presented the highlights of the activities and achievements that have been recorded over the last 6 years of implementation. On the evening of the 18th of April 2018, the SASSCAL book was launched.
I think with most of the presentation done and the book launched, we all can say now we know what SASSCAL 1 was about.
The SASSCAL book is arranged into 8 thematic chapters on climate, water resources, risk management, rangelands, food security, forest resources, land cover dynamics and biodiversity. The book features articles on the SASSCAL Weather Observation Network, pristine ecosystems such as the Okavango Delta and Barotse floodplain, modelling studies on water quality and quantity, how to manage climate risks and identify flood risks, rangeland management in semi-arid areas, assessment of timber stocks, observations of land use and land cover changes at local and regional scales, a checklist of the termites of Zambia, animal and plant species distributions, and the long-term biodiversity changes based on the SASSCAL Long-Term Biodiversity Monitoring Network across the region. The book summarizes 5 years of research in the 5 Southern African countries.
This book has about a circulation of a number of 1,500 copies, and it will be distributed within SASSCAL. Every first author of an article receives a free copy, as well as all the reviewers who have contributed to really improve the quality of the articles in the peer review process. A certain number will be delivered to the national nodes, and all the institutions will receive copies for the libraries.
A community representative who attended the symposium argued the researchers to provide feedback of their findings to the communities and also gave some practical climate change adaptation strategies being implemented.
In this room, we have heads of institutions in the region from South Africa, Angola, Zambia, Botswana, Namibia. Thank you for accepting SASSCAL to be part of the region, And I can assure you, we are not...
Dr. Jane Oloch, SASSCAL's Executive Director, stressed that the value of partnerships in relation to climate change brought the support of the UFNCCC principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities.
Preparing this conference, you became a big part of SASSCAL in planning and executing the symposium. Thank you very, very much for all your support. And the media, we depend on you, of course, and we ask you to prioritize environmental news in your reporting. Everything we do, the scientific outputs we produce, are useless if they are not known. And we thank you for covering this event and being our mouthpiece also in the past. Finally, but not least, to SASSCAL staff members, you have been exceptional. It has been a very fast-paced 6 months since we started actual planning of this symposium. You've worked very consistently and diligently day after day, and no wonder we are nearing the tip of the mountain, but we must reach the tip. Never doubt what a small group of people can actually do, and I cannot doubt anymore. Despite all the challenges that SASSCAL is undergoing currently, please look around you, see all the support we have from all the countries. But I know, and as I quoted before, change can hurt, and the minister also mentioned this, and change can be uncomfortable and be difficult in the beginning. But I also told you, and I'm telling you again, to remember this proverb that says, when the caterpillar thought the world was over, it became a butterfly. So thank you very much, SASSCAL staff, for delivering yet another excellent output. Because of all of you here, and those who are not here, the future of SASSCAL is promising. And with a further research fund committed by BMBF, and more commitment for capacity building, and we are positioning the Open Access Data Center to serve the region, I believe that this is where the impact of the research will be demonstrated when we have all the data on developed products and services that will be useful to the region. Honorable Minister, Excellencies, Ambassadors, and High Commissioners, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the job we occupy, all of us here, aren't just jobs, but a response to the long-term relationship between man and the planet. The impact of environmental change, social change, and climate change demand a new way of thinking. In the current business as usual scenario, we need more than one Earth, but we all know we just have one. I therefore thank you and conclude with the words of the former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon when he said, there is no plan B as there is no planet B. And I thank you very, very much for being here and supporting SASSCAL. Thank you.
The first International SASSCAL Science Symposium provided the delegates with take-home messages on climate change and land management issues and an opportunity to understand the role of SASSCAL in the SADC region.